Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a little bit of lecture, short little bit, and then doing an activity. I'm going to start this video by explaining the activity. And I also just want to encourage y'all to make sure you're keeping up with your schoolwork, like watching these videos on the date they're assigned, and making sure you get the assignments done before they're assigned, like before they're due. And if you need like an extension on the due date, because I don't know what your other teachers, like how much work they're assigning. um, I don't feel like I'm assigning much. So, I guess just what I'm trying to say is like if you need help with like your due dates or you need an extension, like let me know. Like that, y'all know how I feel this, but I hate that expression that it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. No, that's stupid. Whoever first said that is stupid. Like it's better to email me and ask for an extension, and I'm most likely gonna say yes, than for you to email me late and be like, hey, here this is I'm like 3 days late. No, like, that's not great. So, for those of you who've been keeping up with your schoolwork, I'm very proud of you and I'm very appreciative of you. And if any of you need help, like, please let me know because I can't help you if you don't let me know you need help. Well, let's go ahead and get started discussing this assignment. So, we've been learning about peer critiques and constructive criticism the last few days. And so, today we're going to be doing an assignment um, called Peer Critique a Peer. So when y'all did those vocabulary short story videos, well, some of y'all didn't do them, and still waiting for y'all to send me your video so you can get a lit grade. But for those of you who did do them, your videos are posted on Google Classroom as a class comment under that assignment. And so that way it's in a place where everyone can have access to it because I am going to post a list of who's critiquing who. So like, oh, like Zoe's going to do a peer critique for Ben. And I'll post this list on Google Classroom so you have access to it. So you'll just watch one video and then you'll complete a peer critique over that person's video. So for speaker, like for example, we were talking about Zoe and Ben. So speaker would be Ben, critiquer would be Zoe because she's the one doing the critique. Ben is the one speaking. And for speech assignment, it would be the vocabulary short story. And then Zoe is going to watch that video and then she's going to do a peer critique over Ben. So she's going to provide 3 areas of strength. So she's going to make 3 comments on things he did well, and then 3 areas of improvement. So 3 things that he didn't do so well and what he can do differently next time. So again, don't forget, it's not just what you did, what specifically you can do differently next time. So like this is one example of what I'm looking for. So you might say, really creative story. I love the interesting way you made all those different vocab words come together. Cool. That is awesome. That's a great strength. Wouldn't change a thing about it. If you just put creative, that is not good. So I'm going to put that in red and I'm going to do a strike through with it. So that's not good because you just say creative. What was creative about it? What specifically did you like that was creative? So you need to get specific with them. For things that need improvement, you might say, you didn't make a lot of facial expressions. Next time, practice in the mirror before you start recording. And that is perfect. That would be like a beautiful 10 out of 10 example of what you should put for needs improvement. If you just put facial expressions, again, that would not be good. We don't want that. If you even said like, you didn't make a lot of facial expressions, that's not good either. Because again, it says you have to use keywords like next time and try. And so you may think it's obvious, like, okay, you didn't make a lot of facial expressions. So the obvious solution is to make facial expressions. But it's not obvious to this person. So you have to make sure you give them direction. So say, okay, next time maybe practice before you start. Just make sure you read the instructions. I feel like for not all of you, but a lot of you, y'all just aren't reading the instructions and you're sending me dumb emails just because you're too lazy to read. So please read the instructions. They're not hard. It's like it's 3 sentences. You can do it. And again, for those of you who are reading the instructions and being responsible and proactive, I am very, very appreciative of you. Down the middle, this column is a little bit different than the peer critique y'all did over Phil Davison. because this is a different assignment. So I took out a lot of the outlining stuff just because it's a little bit different. So do look for organization. Like if their sentences don't really seem to flow together, that would be an organization issue. Is it creative? Like, did they tell a really basic story, just making the words work however they could, or did they really try hard to find a connection between their vocabulary words? Is it extemporaneous? So, are they trying to look at the camera, aka the audience, or are they just reading off of their piece of paper? Because it should be somewhere in the middle, like looking at their notes every now and then for reference, but trying to engage with the audience through the camera. And is it engaging? Like, are they trying to make this interesting for the audience, or are they just reading it for the sake of the grade? We learned about all of these things in our delivery unit. So if any of these are confusing, please go back and review our lecture videos over delivery. We all should know what these are and how to look for them. Next, you'll be utilizing their use of vocabulary. I'm going to recommend that you go into the spreadsheet where all of our vocabulary words are listed and look and see what words they claimed. You can really easily do like a Command F or maybe Control F if your computer doesn't have the command button. So Command F or Control F, and you can search for any words. If I want to find the word appropriate, okay, so I started typing it and I see those are the two uses. So if I'm looking for like Ben's words that he used, then I could do Command F and or Control F for your computers and search the word Ben, and I can see all the words that he claimed. And that way I can look and familiarize myself with their definitions before I watch his presentation. Because that could be confusing if you're trying to watch his story and if you don't know what the words mean. But hopefully it'll make sense based on context since they wrote a story around these words. So how'd they use the vocabulary? Is it kind of like choppy? Is it appropriate? Does it make sense? Is it effective? They have to start with once upon a time, and they had to end with and they all lived happily ever after. What's the camera angle like? Remember, it should not be looking up their noses. So make sure the camera angle is eye level. Were they looking the camera in the eye, or were they looking at their faces in the screen the whole time? An occasional glance down at the like the screen is okay because like you want to see what you look like to make sure you're doing the right facial expressions and whatnot. But they should not be looking at their screen the whole time. What was the placement of their notes like? Were their notes in a place where they were having to like look down in an extreme way a lot, or were their notes in a place that they weren't having to like totally stop and find their place in their notes all the time? How was their distance from the camera? If they used their whole body as part of the delivery, were they far back enough? Were they far enough from the camera we could see their hand gestures, but close enough where it still felt conversational and you can still see their facial expressions well? And did they cut out the stretching arm, reaching forward to start recording and to stop recording? So those are all things that you could be looking for as you are doing a peer critique over your peer. And I want to go over constructive criticism bingo really quick, just to make sure that y'all like feel good about this form because a lot of y'all did not do super well on the bingo. So just to make sure it's extra clear, because I had someone email and say that they were confused because I said the word try is a good word for constructive criticism and also a bad word. No, like telling someone to try to do something is good. You're saying, hey, next time try to do this or try to do this instead. So that's a direction word, so that's good. But the words that are not good are maybe and if you want, because those are making it like wishy-washy and like telling us not like super urgent that they have to do it. So if we're looking at bingo board, right here we have, okay, thesis was unclear, and then try to make sure your thesis is in the right order. Now looking at both of those and then seeing what we know about constructive criticism says, okay, keywords like next time and try, since this one about the thesis has the word try in it, I'm going to think this one is the good example of constructive criticism about the thesis, and that would be right. This one is a bad example of constructive criticism about the thesis because it doesn't have next time or try. It doesn't give instruction about how to fix that. So yeah, this is the good example of constructive criticism about the thesis. That's the bad example. Same thing for relevance. So this one says, next time, make sure your relevance isn't so conditional. This one just says relevance. So again, based on what we know up here, it says not just what they did. So if you just put the word relevance, that's not helpful. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. And then we want to use words like next time and try. So, okay, the word relevance. And next time, make sure your relevance isn't so conditional. So as you can see, This is the one that's the good example of constructive criticism about relevance. And this one's the bad example of constructive criticism about relevance. Then this one says, maybe if you want, you could make more gestures. So that one kind of combines both of the words we want to avoid. So it does say, like, if it said next time you should make more gestures, or next time you could make more gestures, or try to make more gestures, that'd be great. But because it says maybe if you want, you can make more gestures, it's a bad example. And if you did great on the constructive criticism bingo, I'm sorry, that was probably really redundant for you, but just a lot of students did not as great as I thought y'all would on a bingo game. So I wanted to make sure we went back and reviewed a little bit, so that way y'all can see what I'm kind of expecting of you here. And if y'all have any questions, like, please email me. I'm just sitting at home watching a lot of MasterChef and Lego Master. So like, if y'all have any questions, please email me. Like, I want to help y'all. I want this to make sense because this is really great content. Even if you're not filling out a formal form like this, you will be giving and receiving criticism for the rest of your life. So it is really important for us to understand how to give it and receive it well. It's going to help you in your future relationships, in your jobs. Like, you need it. So I hope that was helpful. And please, if y'all have any questions, let me know. Now we're just going to go through 3 slides of lecture, and then we will be done. You can start on your peer critique, a peer assignment. Let's see. All right, so when we are learning about communication challenges, we've learned about how one of the big challenges of communicating is that people don't have awareness of the context. So like, oh, what's your purpose, or who's your audience, or who's your setting? People don't try to engage with their audience through an interesting delivery. People can be unreceptive to constructive criticism, so that can be a big barrier. And now we're learning about our last little bit of communication challenges, which are barriers in your message, within the audience, or in the environment that prevent communication from happening. So let's scroll down and we'll take a look at those. Oops, I scrolled too far. I hope you all enjoyed all the text messages from my sisters coming in. All right, so what is a communication barrier? It's anything that prevents the audience from receiving and understanding the messages of others. So it is what it sounds like. A barrier is some kind of wall. And so if there's a barrier of communication, that barrier is like a wall preventing communication from happening. So there are 3 different types of communication barriers. And the first type is a message-related barrier. So the barrier, the thing blocking communication from happening, is the message. So the problem is with remember, we learned about encoding and decoding. We learned about media literacy. So like, if this is always funny. I always think of Fraker and his, well, one of his relatives. I don't want to call her out if she's in the room while he's listening to this video. But a relative of Fraker's sent him a text message with like the poop emoji. And so, but she was encoding it as ice cream though. So she thought it was like a chocolate ice cream emoji. And she sent it to Fraker. So when she's encoding her message, she's like, oh, hey, want some ice cream? But when Fraker is decoding that, he's going to read it as, hey, want some poop? So there is a message-related barrier because the problem is with the encoding and decoding of the message. So other examples of message-related barriers would be a really long or disorganized message. So organization is really important with any kind of message because you want to know where the sections begin and end, where it's going, when it's going to start, when it's going to stop. And so if we look at this picture, like, this is like such a conspiracy theory image. And it's like, look at all this yarn, look at all these papers. Like, he's probably trying to communicate to whoever this is, like, his idea, but like, it's a really long and disorganized message. Like, it's messy. Like, they're probably not going to have a easy communication with that person. Or complex or vague language. So if when you're doing your peer critique, a peer assignment, if you don't review their vocabulary before you watch their video, that can be hard for you to understand their story because of the complex language. So that could be a message-related barrier. Or body language could be inconsistent with the content. So if, like, look over here at this image. So like, there's lots of different ways that like your body language can contrast what you've been saying. And we talked about this when we learned about delivery. So it's like, if I'm saying that I'm really excited about something, but like my posture is really slumped and I'm crossing my arms, I probably don't look very excited. But like even just like a simple way you hold your shoulders, or like with your hands in your pockets, or tilt of the head, which direction, like touching your face or legs crossed, like very simple stances can contrast your message, and that's not good. So your body language could be inconsistent with your content. That kind of gets in the way of the message being sent. Because remember, we learned that when like your body language and your message are contrasting, we're more likely to believe the body language, and so that would definitely get in the way of the message being sent. And lastly, a disregard for audience needs. So we learned about learning styles and demographics, and we have to use those to prepare our message for our audience. And so if you don't use what you know about your audience to prepare and tailor your message to them, you might not be able to reach them as well. So that's definitely going to be like a problem with your message because you didn't prepare your message for your specific audience. So remember, for message related barriers, it's just any kind of problem that's with the message itself. So even for body language, that maybe sounds like, oh, like maybe it's some other kind of barrier. No, the body language is preventing the message from being sent in the way it's meant to. Even if you're disregarding the audience needs, that can be confusing for the next one. But I would say for disregard for audience needs, the message is not being tailored to the audience. So the message is the problem with communication. For our next communication barrier, first we had message related barriers, so the problem was with the message. But next, the problem is internal to the audience. So it's not internal with you, it's internal with the audience. So an internal barrier means the problem is with the audience's ability or willingness to listen. So examples could be fatigue, like look at this guy, like he's so tired, he stayed up all night, probably studying, and so he's exhausted. He's too tired to be able to listen well to this really cool lecture. So that's an internal barrier, or maybe just general disinterest. Like maybe it's a really boring lecture or something, and so that's an internal barrier. That's a problem within the audience. Maybe they just have poor listening skills. Maybe they just weren't ever taught to actively listen, or to listen with empathy, or to just like grin and bear and listen for like 50 minutes to your teacher. So those would be internal barriers. Could be past experience, like maybe you're giving a speech on a topic they think they already know a lot about, or they have bad experience with, and so they may not feel super inclined to listen. That's an internal barrier. Or there's personal problems, like this girl looks really stressed, like everyone's trying to demand stuff for her, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so stressed." So maybe she's stressed, and that's why she can't really focus on her task at hand and listening to everyone around her. So those are all internal barriers because the problems are internal to the audience. And these are really tricky for a speaker to overcome because it's not something under your control. Like for the message related barriers, like as a speaker, most of those are in your control. But for an internal barrier, it's all the audience's issue. So you can't really control them. However, you just have to utilize your elements of delivery as best as you can to try your hardest to engage your audience. Try to relate with them, try to keep them interested. So it's kind of like this last part of message related barriers said like, oh, if you disregard your audience needs, then like that's a message related barrier. And it is because you can like, if you're not preparing your message for your audience, it's going to get away in the communication. But also, if you are trying to make your message appropriate and relevant for your audience, it may help counteract some of those internal barriers they may be struggling with too. So message related barrier, the problem is with the message itself. Internal barrier, the problem is within the audience. And lastly, there are external barriers. So the problem is with the environment that you are speaking in. There could be loud noises and distractions. So like this guy is trying to do homework and his neighbor is being super loud. Maybe y'all are experiencing this with trying to do schoolwork. And if your parents are doing their Zoom meetings or something in the next room and they're being really loud, or if your other sibling finished all their homework and they're watching the movie super loud, that could be some kind of noise or distraction. Or if there's an unpleasant environment, if the room you're speaking in is really hot or really cold, or the chairs are really hard plastic, that could be difficult. Or if there's problems with technology or equipment, then like that's a big external barrier. So the problem that is preventing communication from happening is something within the environment. And basic preparation is key to avoid these. Like just make sure you tell your family, hey, I'm going to be doing homework during this time. Please try to keep it down. Or I'm going to be on a Zoom call. Keep it down. Or just change the thermostat before you give your presentation. Or just practicing with your technology and equipment to make sure everything's functioning properly. So basic prep is going to be key to avoid all of these. And that's all we've got for today. So all you're going to do now is do your peer critique of a peer. And I've got the list of who's doing a critique for who on Google Classroom. The way that we're going to turn these in, I'm going to have this typed out on the assignment. But you're going to like click on share. And then you're going to share it with like whoever. So if this is Zoe's document, she's sharing it with Ben. She's going to type his name in, and then she'll send it to him. So that way, like, yeah, like I'm gonna be the one who's grading it, but he can also have access to it so that he can see like what things he can improve on in the future. So again, accountability, it's important. And so you're gonna be having to look and see, you're gonna have to know that I'm gonna be grading this, but also whoever you're critiquing is gonna see it too. So make sure you give helpful feedback. Don't just do it for the sake of getting it over with, like actually try to give them helpful feedback. That's all I've got. This assignment is going to be due tomorrow night, so that'll be Friday before 11:59 p.m. Get to work. Have a good one.